Hi folks, Wooden Boat Dan here. Just wanted to give you a heads up. The podcast you're about to listen to was recorded several years ago, so some of the phone numbers, email addresses, website links, and time-sensitive information are no longer valid. Please keep that in mind as you listen. If you'd like to contact me, my email address is woodenboatdan@gmail.com. Thank you and enjoy the podcast. Thanks for tuning in to Hooked on Wooden Boats weekly podcast episode number 66. I'm your host, Dan Matson, aka Wooden Boat Dan. If he can't do it, nobody can unless they try really hard. And this is the world's first podcast fully dedicated to celebrating the art, craft, history, tradition, and romance, and note those are in alphabetical order, of wooden vessels all over the world. Okay, so maybe I am OCD. I've got to have things in alphabetical order. I used to work with a gentleman that worked with two gentlemen. We would go golfing. I went golfing with them once, and one of them was a little OCD, and the other one that wasn't OCD, he would move his business partner's golf clubs around in his golf bag. So where the 2-iron was supposed to go, he'd put the 7-iron and vice versa. And it would really mess the other guy up. Okay, so I don't know how I got off on that. But anyway, got a little cold today, so hopefully you can understand me okay. Today's featured segment is an interview with Dan Leach of the Center for Wooden Boats. Dan is the marketing guy there. His title is more official than that, but I don't recall the exact unique title. But Dan is out there on the front lines promoting the Center for Wooden Boats in Seattle, Washington, so you're going to want to stick around for that interview. So I thought maybe it'd be kind of fun to play a couple of bloopers that I've made these actually I made today while I was trying to record the introduction. And it's not as easy as you think to talk into a microphone sitting in your car at Starbucks, knowing that people from all over the world could be listening. Doesn't always start out smooth, so I thought I'd play a couple short clips here just for fun. So here we go. There might be somebody who can if they try really hard. And this is the world's blah, 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 blah. Okay, so that's how it started today. It took me 3 takes to get going. I think in one of those I couldn't remember my name, maybe. I don't know. This week, I did work on my canoe. If you recall, I had 2 coats of pre-coat primer on the hull that I had sanded with 220. And I put on my first coat of Interlux Brightside's top coat on the bottom of my boat. So it's a white paint. And I rolled it on with a foam brush, and I tipped it off. I rolled it on with a foam roller, and I tipped it off with a foam brush. But the results were kind of mixed. I actually got a few small runs, which I have now sanded out. So I think I've got to get a much lighter coat on the canoe. But anyway, it is coming along. And now the pressure is turning up on me to get this thing done because we may have an offer on our house now, and if we move, I probably am not going to have an 1,100 square foot heated shop to work in. I've gotten a little spoiled, so I got to get this puppy done soon. So I'm going to keep working on it, and I will keep you posted on my progress. The wooden boat hack of the week has to do with sandpaper. And sandpaper is the kind of thing, if you talk to some people about sandpaper, it could make them a little sleepy, but I find it pretty exciting, actually, because it can make or break you when you're building a boat. So here's some tips for sandpaper. One is to buy the highest quality sandpaper that you can, whether you're buying sheets of sandpaper or blocks. At least at my local hardware store, there's kind of 2 levels, and the more expensive paper will last longer, and it doesn't fill up with the sanding material as quickly. So you'll get the job done faster, and I think the paper will last long enough to pay for the extra cost. So that's one recommendation. I would also recommend you buy the paper in bulk. by 50 sheets at a time or 20 sanding blocks at a time if you can. And then the other thing I do is I have a little wire sandpaper brush, and it's a little brush that has wires that are probably maybe 1/16 of an inch long in a pattern that's probably 1 inch wide by maybe 3 inches long. When I put a fresh sheet of sandpaper on my quarter sheet sanding block, once I start sanding with that, depending upon what I'm sanding, it's going to start filling up with material, wood, paint, primer, whatever. If I take that little brush and rub it over the sandpaper, as soon as it starts filling up, that will keep the sandpaper clean, which will give me a better sanding result and make the paper last a little bit longer. So I would encourage you to get a sandpaper wire brush if you don't have one and begin using that. It's not going to make the sandpaper last forever. That's not the point. The main thing is to keep the sandpaper clean while it is working effectively. As soon as that piece of sandpaper is or has reached its lifespan, you want to get that thing off of there and put a new sheet on. And I know if you're like me, that kills you because now you got to go cut another quarter sheet off your sheet of sandpaper. You have to attach it to the sanding block. But I've kind of got used to batch processing on that. I cut a bunch of sheets at once. And actually what I plan on doing is getting like 2 or 3 sanding blocks so that I can have 2 or 3 loaded up with paper so I can go right from my boat, grab a fresh block, and do it that way. So that is the wooden boat hack of the week for sandpaper. I would like to give a warm welcome and shout out to my new e-newsletter subscribers, Diederik Goschel, Chuck Swikert, and Brian Kirby. Thanks for joining the e-newsletter list. If you're listening and you haven't joined the list yet, I send out a monthly newsletter. You can subscribe by going to hookedonwoodenboats.com/subscribe. The newsletter is a way for me to stay connected to folks that like my podcast, and I get to send information out about upcoming events, fun resources, general stuff that I'm working on. So I would encourage you to sign up if you haven't. And you can unsubscribe at any time. Well, we're coming to the close of 2012, and if you're like me and you listen to the 48 Days podcast by Dan Miller, which I would recommend you do, regardless of what you do in life or don't do, or your age or your gender or anything, this guy is good. And he suggests that you write out your goals for the coming year, actually by November 15th. So I've got my goals written, but actually I've got to come up with some goals for Hooked on Wooden Boats for 2013 still. But I thought next week what I would do for the podcast, if I can get my act together time-wise, is I would do a podcast and talk about the highlights for me of 2012 with the first full year of the Hooked on Wooden Boats podcast. So that's what you have to look forward to next week, folks. Hope you tune in again. Okay, up next we have the interview with Dan Leach from the Center for Wooden Boats. Dan is a really fun, gregarious, outgoing, optimistic, upbeat, wooden boat lover guy. I think you're really going to enjoy this, so take it away, Dan. All right, it's December 7th, 2012. I'm at the Center for Wooden Boats with Dan Leach. Welcome to the podcast, Dan.
Well, thanks, Dan.
You've actually been on one time before for a short little interview we did down in Portland.
I remember that.
Earlier this year, yeah. So I don't know much about you, Dan, so let's start with where you grew up and what you did as a youth.
Oh, wow, you're going way back. Yeah. Well, actually, I was born and raised in Seattle.
Oh, you were? Okay.
Actually, yeah. I mean, it's so funny. There's so many people you meet from around here who are not from around Seattle, but I actually was born at Virginia Mason Hospital.
Wow.
A long time ago. And I grew up in the north end of town, and
like Shoreline area, or
no, Lake City, and then Bothell. We moved to Bothell when I was a kid, and so yeah, I grew up here. Was born and raised here till I was about 12. We left. My teenage and years were spent actually back in Michigan, and I went to college at the University of Michigan. And but I always knew that I wanted to come home.
Yeah.
And so eventually I did.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So did your family do some boating when you were a kid?
We did do boating when I was a kid. Obviously, when you grow up in Seattle, in the 60s, there was a lot of boats around and going down to Green Lake and getting the pedal boats or going to get canoes out at the University of Washington boathouse where they still rent those canoes.
Do they really?
Out there.
I haven't done that for a while.
It's been a long time.
Fun, yeah.
But I remember doing that as a kid, actually, because we went to church nearby, and so that's what you do on Sunday after church. You go down and go someplace. I also, when we were kids, my father had, and his father had 2 boats. So we had a power boat, little 17-foot runabout, with a outboard on the back, and but it had steering, so it was a little bit bigger. And there was a sailboat that my father grew up sailing, a Rhodes Bantam. I always have a place in my heart for Phil Rhodes and the Rhodes Bantam, not his boat.
A glass or wood boat?
That one originally was wood, but the design was originally designed to be built in wood, but the one that my father had was a fiberglass one with wood trim, with lots and lots of wood trim on it.
Yeah.
And that's the boat that I grew up and was first introduced to sailing in. But we always had both, and so we do both. We do water skiing some days and get in a power boat and go running around and have picnics in a power boat.
Lake Washington or Lake Union?
There and also back east.
Oh, okay.
And my grandfather lived back east, and so we do a little bit of that there, and it was really funny. My brother always liked the power boat, and I always liked the sailboat, and that's still the the way it is today.
Really?
My brother prefers going power boating, and I prefer sailing. And my wife and I have a sailboat. So
Okay.
But I like power boats too. Don't get me wrong at all. I try not to get involved in choosing one over t'other. And there are times when being snug in a bug inside of a trawler is a wonderful thing to be, especially here in the Northwest when it can get a little bit cold.
Right.
So absolutely. So we grew up doing both, and I love being around boats all my life.
So what did you do after high school then?
Went to college.
Yeah.
And,
where'd you go to school?
Went to the University of Michigan. And
that's right. You said that.
Yeah, and I studied, I don't know, political science and history, things of that nature.
Really?
Superpower relations, and then the Soviet Union fell, and I felt like, well, that was a useless thing to study, wasn't it? No. Just a joke. It's a great school to go to, and a great thing to study, and after I left there, I went to Oregon actually, and got married to my wife, had kids.
Where were you in Oregon?
Eugene.
Oh, really?
Eugene, yeah. She's from Eugene.
Okay.
And my father moved out there actually when I was a senior in high school to go to law school. Hey.
Really?
A long history of family members who choose different careers late in life. Pay attention, that comes in later in this story, I think.
Yeah, right.
So
you were down in Eugene, got married.
Yep.
Had a couple kids.
Yep, couple kids. Worked, and I worked in radio.
Yeah, I saw that on your LinkedIn profile. I cheated a little bit.
It's true. This is
really for
this is
14 years.
This is not my first career. Oh, longer than that actually. I started doing that when I was in high school actually. But when I came out of school, I worked in radio news for a long time. Eventually, got all the way back up here to Seattle and worked for Cairo. And spent 14 years at Cairo.
Okay, that's what I was thinking. It showed Cairo on there for 14 years.
Yep.
Yeah, and then you did a stint at Microsoft.
That is correct. After being at Cairo for 14 years and doing and don't get me wrong, that was a load of fun. Had a great time doing it. Met lots of people. It was very interesting. Traveled the country covering stories. All kinds of things. I specialized in technology and transportation. Was the sort of beat that was my favorite and the thing I paid most attention to. But I covered politics. I covered when the Ken Behring was threatening to take the Seahawks and move them out of town. I covered that. And,
oh, did you?
Sure. And, political campaigns. I went to the New Hampshire primary as a reporter, in the 90s.
Cool.
To cover Bill Clinton. And it was a great job, great fun. But after you've done it for a long time, you get to the point where you say, well, okay, I've done that for a while, and it's been great fun, raised my family, and had a great time going everywhere. But I was ready to go do something else. So I started trying to figure out what to do next.
Yeah.
And it was not a difficult, it wasn't because they didn't want me at Cairo or I didn't like them. They're a great company, still are, but I was ready for something else. So after that, interestingly enough, I eventually found my way out to Redmond and worked for Microsoft for a while, and that was kind of fun and interesting. And I worked in corporate communications, and I worked in the corporate communications group for a while. And at Microsoft, of course, once you're in Microsoft, there's the old, if you don't eventually go work for a product group, then they don't, you got to do that at one point. You don't want to stay in one place for too long. Yeah. And so eventually I went to work for the Office group, the information worker group that produces every product that has Office in its name, and that's servers and the Office suite of products and applications itself, and I worked for them for a while, and then I got to that point in life where I said, this has been great. It's been great fun. They like me, I like them, but I just got a hankering to do something a little bit different. So that's when I went back to school and studied marine carpentry here at Seattle Central Community College's Wood Construction Center. Yep. Okay. Went up there and spent a couple of years learning.
So why did you do that? What drove you to do that, Dan?
Well, I have always been around boats, loved boats, and was sailing and doing a little bit of racing, not much, but a little sailing, a little on bigger boats out at Seattle, out at Shilshole, right, out at Shilshole, and I wanted to learn more. Plus, I also, when you're working in software, you work in the world of things that you cannot touch, and when I was a kid, I grew up, my dad always had a wood shop, and my grandfather was a developer who built houses, and they were all really good at it, but somewhere in that early process, I never got taught all those good things about how to do woodwork. And I always felt like, I should know more about this stuff. And then I was doing more boating and getting more involved and realized, boy, I better learn more about boats and how to take care of them if I'm going to get this serious about having more boats and bigger boats in my life. Yeah. Because small boats are one thing, bigger boats are another thing, and learning how to deal with them, and also wanting to try something new. So that's why I went back and studied that, and it was great.
How long was that program, Dan?
It's 2 years. It's a 2-year program. Came out of that and went to work. Was doing restoration
at Dunbar.
At Dunbar, yeah, in Seattle. Yeah, work with Roy. Roy's great. You can learn a ton from Roy. He's got more knowledge in his little finger. Some love him, some think he's an old curmudgeon, and I think he's both. He's both a brilliant guy who's also a little curmudgeonly, but he's great. It's great fun to talk to. You'd love sitting down with Roy. If you haven't done it yet, you should go do it. Yeah, because he's got all kinds of great stories.
Where's his shop at?
It's right next to the Ballard Bridge.
Oh, it is.
Yeah, but it's great. I loved it because we worked on all kinds of boats.
And you did restoration,
repairs, restoration, and things like that in his shop.
New builds or
not there? No, no. He's mostly was working in restorations and things of that nature. The new build, there was a friend of his who was building a new boat in a tent right next to his shop, which was kind of fun to look at the process, see where he was going, what kind of boat he was building. But yeah, at this point in Seattle, for the most part, it's mostly restoration work and working on other boats. I helped build boats new in school. One of them's in our collection down here at the Center for Wooden Boats.
Oh, really?
The electric launch Dora.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I actually helped build that boat. There were a lot of students who helped build that boat.
That's like Dick's favorite boat, isn't it?
It's kind of a pretty little electric launch.
Yeah, it's cool.
Our team actually had the honor of finishing her, installing the final systems, finishing out the last bit of the ceiling work on the inside, building the rest of the seating, building all of the just doing all of the last finish work, installing all the hardware, and getting the engine. And we actually, I was on the team. I was on her the day we delivered her and put her in the water the first time at the north end of the lake without her top. She has that nice little sort of Pringle pretzel kind of top on her, but we first launched her without that, and I remember that day getting into a wetsuit because we weren't sure what was. I said, maybe I better bring a wetsuit just in case, and I was off the end of the boat in the wetsuit in the water as we were slowly backing her down the ramp at the north end of Lake Union. And just to, we bring her down a foot and kind of look, make sure, no, everything looks good. And, go inside and look in the bilge and make sure that it's a wooden boat. There's always going to be some water will come in. We just weren't sure how much was going to be. So, yeah, that was a lot of fun.
When was that, Dan?
Oh, gosh, that's like 5 years ago, something like that.
So that was before you came here?
Yes, before I came here.
Yeah.
And
she's got a real curvy hull on her.
Oh, yeah. She's beautiful fantail launch.
What's the construction method on that hull?
Oh, it was just standard frame and...
Plank on frame?
Plank on frame. So,
really?
Yeah, it's plank on frame. And
you have to steam some of the hull?
Well, I would say I was not involved in the hull construction. I was involved in the finish construction, so I can't tell you whether that's necessary. Because it is so short, there might have been some, because clearly when you look at her hull, that fantail design takes it from vertical in the front to horizontal in the back, and somewhere in going around those corners, wouldn't be a bit surprised. We did have a big steam box that we did a lot of steaming at school, so it certainly wouldn't surprise me. But again, I wasn't involved in the actual hull construction, so I wasn't there the day they did put those planks on.
So where did you go after Dunbar then?
Well, after that, I did a bunch of things, but I did a stint back at Microsoft just because there was a group that wanted me to come back and do some work for them. And I said, well, I'll give it a shot. I don't want to stay here very long, but it was in a new area that I had never done before, so I said, sure. But I stayed there. It was supposed to be for about 6 months, and, or it was supposed to be there for a maternity leave for a woman who was having a baby. And then I was going to go, and I said, this is great, just a short assignment. And then she came back, and they wouldn't let me go, and that ground on to about 9 months. And as I said, it's not bad in any way. I love working there. It was great fun. The commute's kind of a pain, but I loved doing the work, and I loved working with the group that I was working with. But at the end, I was ready. I actually was supposed to go until June, and I pulled the trigger at March because they went through a typical reorg, and I said to my boss, I tell you what, I'll make you look brilliant. Why don't I just go now? You can save the thousands of dollars that your budget says you're going to pay me for the next couple of months, so you'll look great because you will have saved money in the reorg process. And I was more than happy to go at that point. Yeah. And it was a great project, great fun to go back. But then after that, I did some work for West Marine for a while, and then Betsy was doing some things here, and she and I sat down.
Betsy, who's the director here?
Betsy, the executive director of the Center for Wooden Boats, and I were chatting, and I said, boy, it'd be fun to come and do something with them. And she just said, we have some things we'd like you to do. And I said, great, I'm a boatwright. She said, it's not boatwright. I need someone to do this business engagement and development and sponsorship development and, deal with the business community and as we're working on building new buildings and that type of stuff. I said, Betsy, I'm a boatwright. She said, yeah, but I need your other skills right now. I need you to come and do these things for the museum. And she said, okay, I'll tell you what. 1 day a week I'll let you be a boatwright and work on the collection and work on the boats. And my wife at that point said, she's just playing with you at this point, isn't she? Just to get you to say yes. I said, yes, maybe, but of course I said yes. And because I have loved the Center for Wooden Boats for decades and volunteered here. I volunteered here before I came to work here. Yeah. And, when Betsy says to you, I need you to do this for the museum so that we can be successful in raising money to keep the lights on and keep the boats here and keep the kids in the lessons and all of that stuff. And she said, I'd really love your help doing it. And of course I said yes. What was I supposed to say? Yeah. It's not, I don't get to work on the boats.
How many opportunities do you get?
Hey, how many opportunities do you get to do this? And I love it. I love both jobs. As I said, it wasn't that I didn't like, the other things that I've done in my life, and I don't not know those things. I just,
Well, now you get to do them in an environment that you love, right?
I come to work on a floating dock every day. How cool is that?
Yeah. I'm a little jealous.
Everybody should be. It's a great job. I have a lot of fun. It is great because I get to, explain to the community and the business folks why they should support the Center for Wooden Boats, the museum, why the institution's important to the region, why, it really deserves their financial support. and I get to pick up my tools and go work on the collection and work on some of these amazing boats and help keep them and bring them back to life. Bring a Blanchard, back that's older than my grandmother, bring it back to life. And so in that sense, I love it. I get to exercise both halves of my brain and, learn new skills all the time. I'm just a journeyman boatwright, learning every day. I haven't done enough of it to say I know enough. I certainly know enough to be dangerous, and I certainly know a few things, but there's so much more for me to learn, and I love the community, the people that I can be here and learn from, and it is truly, I can't think of, I can't think of a better job. Betsy keeps telling me if she, where would I go and be as happy? It's like, oh, that's hard to imagine, wouldn't it? Isn't it?
Really. So you guys have some plans to add some facility here?
Oh, yeah. Right? Well, as you know, we've added a new facility at the north end of Lake Union.
Right.
And we're still doing the planning for building a new education center in Lake Union Park, just near the existing Center for Wooden Boats at the south end of the lake that most folks know. Most folks may not know that we used to have a lot of space that we rented in the Naval Reserve Armory building for classrooms and for some office space for the staff. When MOHI decided that was going to be the new Museum of History and Industry, and a couple of years ago we had to move out of that space and concentrate all of our staff and everything that we do just into our existing floating facilities, or up at our facility up at Camano Island at Kama Beach State Park up on Camano Island. The challenge is, we are out of space. We have to turn away schools that want to come down for field trips. We have to, meetings that we have to have back to back in the same room. It's not conducive to good operations. You can't even to have a private discussion about something that is, more private, personal or whatever. We have to go walk along Valley Street or go walk down our docks. That's our private meeting space, is to go for a walk, so we can have a little bit of privacy, because you can't get it in the boathouse when everybody's jammed into one room and working together, sitting knee to knee. On the flip side, we have no problem with internal communication.
Everybody knows everything that's
going on. It's great. You don't have to send out memos. Everybody just says, okay, yeah, I got it. We're opening on that day early, right? Whatever. So it makes it easy in that sense.
Yeah.
But yes, you're back to your key question. We have plans to build a new education center in Lake Union Park, just up on the land, up above the waterway where people are used to finding our boats. Doesn't mean we're moving, doesn't mean we're going to lose these buildings here. They will just, we will be adding back the space that we lost when MOHI moved in.
When will that happen, Dan?
The exact timeline for it is not 100% sure yet. We expect that in the next year we will start construction. We're still, working out all of the details, the design, and all that sort of stuff.
Will it be a two-story building?
Should be a two-story, 10,000 square feet.
10,000. Wow.
10,000.
So there'll be some workshop
There will be
space.
a new workshop. There will be dedicated youth classroom space. There will be a dedicated volunteer space. Because as you probably have figured out, how could 15 to 20 people do all the programs at the Center for Wooden Boats? Well, we can't, but we have about 700 volunteers who do the things that the Center for Wooden Boats accomplishes. Our volunteer corps is amazing. They are the Center for Wooden Boats. When people say, to me, hey, you are the Center for Wooden Boats? No. I am not the Center for Wooden Boats. The volunteers are the Center for Wooden Boats. They make this place. They always have, and undoubtedly they will continue to make it the success that it has been.
Very cool.
Yep.
Yeah. So you've been here almost 2 years, is that right?
A couple of years.
And loving it?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So do you have any boats yourself right now?
I have a 35-foot Hinterholler Niagara, which is a fiberglass. I'm sorry.
I didn't hear that.
Yeah, I'm sorry. It's that hard kind of wood, really hard kind of plasticky wood. It's got some wood on it, but I have it's a cruising yacht that my wife and I have, and we use it we love sailing.
Where do you have that? Shoal?
No, actually, I have it right here on Lake Union. It's great. It's about a 4-minute walk from the office.
Oh,
it's
nice.
Great. I used to have it at Shoal, but then I realized I used to bring it in for the month of July, I would poke around local marinas and knock on the door and say, hey, you got any subleases for the month? Because we do the Wooden Boat Festival. It's really nice to have the boat nearby, so after the fireworks and all of the stuff at the Lake Union Wooden Boat Festival, I can just walk to the boat. And after a couple of years of that, my wife and I said, well, it's really convenient. And the woman where I had the boat this summer said, that slip is open permanently if you wanted it. And I said, really? So my wife and I, while we were sailing up on the Sunshine Coast in Canada, we were talking about, well, maybe we should just leave the boat there when we get back, and so we did. So maybe it's a little of an experiment.
Yeah.
We'll see if we really like it. It's interesting. It's nice having it be just like a 4-minute walk from my office. That's kind of really nice.
Really.
But it's a great boat, and I love it. And I have a couple of dinghies. One I built, one I bought, because my wife kind of likes the stability of a rubber boat, so I bought her a rubber boat. What are you going to do?
Yeah, exactly.
What are you going to do?
Cool. So you get out on your boat quite a bit, it sounds like, or some?
Some. Obviously now we have to go through the locks when we want to really go out for the weekend, but that's okay. We love doing it. We're getting good at it, and we get out every chance we can. It's comfortable in the wintertime, too. I put a full enclosure on the cockpit so that it would be really convenient and warm to sail, even when the weather is somewhat questionable. I know some people will say I'm a little bit of a lightweight there, not getting out there and truly enjoying the northwest weather. But as I age, I find that I still enjoy it. I just enjoy looking at it through my nice enclosure.
Yeah, right. So, can you give us the contact information for the Center for Wooden Boats?
Absolutely. Yeah. You can reach us at the Center for Wooden Boats. Online is the easiest place to find all our information at cwb.org.
Okay.
And if you want to call us, it's 206-382-2628. And of course, I can't remember off the top of my head because I don't dial it as much, but we also have a facility at Kama Beach, the Center for Wooden Boats at Kama Beach State Park, and you'll find information about that as well on our cwb.org website. Has its own link to Kama Beach, so you can find out the programs and all the fun stuff going on up there, and it's great. I love it. I actually live in South Snohomish County, so I can.
Oh, you do?
I can go either way, and I love going up there. In fact, next month I already have the boatman's cabin reserved for a stay with my wife up there. So we're going to go stay right on the beach at Kama Beach. It's going to be great.
Spot. I'm assuming you're always looking for new volunteers.
Always. They are, as I said, the heart and soul of the Center for Wooden Boats, and people can find information about volunteering on our website as well.
Okay, very good. And any parting comments for our listeners today, Dan?
The only thing I would say to people is, love your boats. Love your wooden boats, of course, because I try not to get involved or fight with people about fiberglass or other types of boats. And I, of course, love wooden boats. But I own a fiberglass boat, and that's okay, too. Mm-hmm. All are welcome at the Center for Wooden Boats to come see our wooden boats. And if you want to try out a wooden boat, we have some for you to try, even if you might purchase a different type.
Yeah, very cool.
But all boats are welcome here.
Okay, very good. Well, thanks for your time today, Dan.
No problem. Thanks, Dan.
Take care.
You bet.
Thanks, Dan, for taking the time to do that interview. It was really fun to come down to the Center for Wooden Boats and hang out and meet some new people and I think I did 3 or 4 interviews that day, so that was pretty cool. So I hope things go well for you, Dan, at the Center for Wooden Boats. For anybody listening that wants to find out more about the Center for Wooden Boats, I just got distracted because I got a text message that there's another showing at our house today at 3:30. Man, this thing could actually sell. Anyway, now I got to think about what I was talking about. Okay, now I remember where I was. If you're listening and you want more information about the Center for Wooden Boats, go to cwb.org, and there's all kinds of cool information. They have 3 locations now, 2 in Seattle, both on Lake Union, and 1 on Camino Island, which isn't too far from where I live, which is north of Seattle. I'm guessing it's an hour and 15-minute drive from Seattle, something like that. So check it out. It's really a cool spot. If you ever visit Seattle or you live in Seattle and have never been to the Center for Wooden Boats, you can go down there and it's free. It's an outdoor museum of all kinds of working wooden boats, mostly small boats, power, sail, electric, motorized. And it's really fun to talk to the people down there. They've got great programs. They've got a free sale on Sundays. So check it out if you haven't already done so. If you'd like to leave a voicemail feedback message for me, if you have a question or you'd like to just say how much you enjoy this show, I would encourage you to go to hookedonwoodenboats.com/voicemail. When you do that, you'll be able to leave a message for me directly from... Sorry about that. Now my phone's ringing. Be able to leave me a voicemail message directly from your computer. And if it's a good message and I like it, which I probably would, then I can play it on the podcast, which is kind of cool. It's fun to hear from the listeners, although not that many call in. Occasionally someone does, but doesn't have to be anything long or fancy. Just call in and say, hey, I love Hooked on Wooden Boats. Keep up the good work. Or I've got a question about sandpaper, whatever it is. Shoot me a message if you feel like it. You can also leave comments on my website. I post show notes each week for each podcast that I publish on Thursday, and usually have pictures there too, and you can leave notes there. And there's share buttons. If you like the podcast, go to my website and you can share any of the episodes on Facebook, Twitter, and Pinterest. You can always email me, dan@hookedonwoodenboats.com. You can subscribe to the podcast through iTunes or through the podcatcher software on your smartphone or MP3 player. If you'd like to support the show and you're getting ready to make some purchases from Amazon, go to hookedonwoodenboats.com/Amazon. And if you make a purchase from there of anything on Amazon, I get paid a small commission. Same thing for Jamestown distributors. That link would be hookedonwoodenboats.com/JD. I also have a store on my website if you'd like to buy some t-shirts, hats, thongs, that sort of thing for Christmas. You can order some stuff there through my store. Thanks for tuning in today, folks, putting up with my cold and my memory loss. I'm only 58, though, so hopefully my memory loss is going to get better, not worse. Anyway, have a great week. If you don't own a wooden boat or have never built one, I would encourage you to do so as soon as possible. It's a very rewarding experience. To build something with your hands that you can go use is really cool. I'm on my 5th build now since 1971. So what's that, an average of one every 8 years, something like that? But I'm picking up the pace. I'm going to finish one this year almost. Hope to do another one next year. So anyway, think about that. And if you have questions, shoot me an email or give me a call. And we'll talk about your build and how you should make it simple the first time so you get through it and have a good experience. Anyway, have a great week. Keep the bright side up and the barnacled side down. Wooden Boat Dan, over and out.